Da 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 da. So several weeks ago, Lethal Cosmetics announced that they were doing a collab with Dexter, and myself, as a huge Dexter apologist and a 3 times watcher of the show, I was excited. And I was also like, before they announce what their collab is, I want to see what my little brain comes up with for like what a Dexter collab should be. So today, as I'm filming this, it is January 9th, and they did reveal today what exactly the collab is, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but I put together a palette yesterday. So before I knew what they had come up with, I racked my brain to see what I would come up with. And although I had intentions of like doing this whole video before they revealed theirs, I feel like it's kind of fun because we could talk through what I came up with and then talk about what they came up with, you know? So let's start by switching over to the overhead footage of me putting together my palette and telling you why. So as I was deciding what my personal Dexter palette would include, my first thought was, of course, blood. You need a red. You need blood. Clearly this is also where the team from Lethal Cosmetics got, and then they stopped. For this, I just wanted a true red matte. This is the shade Boop from Luxie. And just a good old bright red to kick us off. So Boop is the color of like fresh blood, but the show also deals a lot with like crime scenes and blood slides, so I thought something a little bit deeper for dried blood would make sense also. So this is the shade Heartthrob, also from Luxie. I think you could see in the swatch that it's deeper than the first one, although in the pan, I feel like they look kind of similar. So after the obvious and not wanting this to be a full red palette, I was trying to think of what other colors really encapsulated Dexter for me. And I also feel like a big one is gray. I feel like in the show, it really contrasts the particularness and the neatness of his home and his office with the messiness of what he does as a vigilante killer. So I feel like there's a lot of gray present in the show, and I chose Chic Happens from ColourPop to fill that spot. It is a little bit of a brownish gray because I don't have a lot of gray in my collection. I thought of using a silver, but I just felt like a matte kind of did it best. The next color that I thought was so Dexter was the color that he wears when he kills people. It's so weird to like say this stuff out loud like it's no big deal. He wears this olive Henley as like his kill shirt. That's why I'm wearing this olive shirt today. This was the shadow I felt best worked for this spot. I had more options when it came to shimmers for olives, but I like this as a matte, and I feel like this gives the vibe. This shade is Courtney from Divina. I really like how this color story is coming along already. My next line of thinking was the fact that it takes place in Miami, and it's very like sunny and bright and blue everywhere. So I thought blues were necessary for like the Dexter color scheme. This shade is Atlantis from Terra Moons, and I thought to kick off the blues, this was a good kind of like rich sky blue. And these are all the mattes that I included in my palette, and I feel like they're a really cool assortment. I also wanted a rich ocean blue, and this one is Nightfall from Luxie. And a lighter blue. This one is Salty from Luxie. And there's my little blue row. Also very true to Miami and to the settings in Dexter is much more like swampy nature. Like I feel like this is like the pure, pristine, perfect weather, but we also encounter, yeah, swamps, greenish water. So for this, I have Morning Rain from Luxie. A lot of Luxie shades. I think I was just deep in my Luxie palette when I put this together. Chandelier from Cleona. I like the like mucky greenishness for this, but also like practically speaking, in putting together a palette, I love having an assortment of lighter colors and shades that I can use for my inner corner. So I thought this would make a very welcome addition. And I also chose Keep It Fun from Sydney Grace, which to me is a good like greenish ocean color. To round out the row with his kill shirt color, I noticed the shade that I just recently unboxed from the Cleona 12 Days of Holiday box shadows. That's definitely the name of it. This is the shade Vineyard, and I thought this was a good shade because it had that like olivey green, but it also has this warmth base that kind of ties in the like more bloody colors with the olive of his Henley. And I thought that worked so well right there in the palette. And also Electric from Glaminatrix. This is another like greenish shade with like orangey redness. And I thought it also tied in this row and makes it a better palette for me, having some lighter iridescent colors to like mix and match with. So as I think I said before, when I was putting this together, it was before the Lethal Cosmetics reveal, and I realized that Lethal doesn't have a usual pan size for their palette. It doesn't have a uniform amount of pans. That's what I'm trying to say. But it looks like a lot of their palettes recently had like 15 pans, 3 rows of 5, so that's what I was going off of, and I was like, what else is Dexter to me? Because in a way, I feel like this could be the palette. I feel like this is an interesting, unique 12 pan that, in my opinion, encapsulates the essence of Dexter. But I was thinking about what else is there. And kind of along the same lines as all of this like sterile gray contrasting with the messiness of what he does on screen, I was thinking about how a lot of Dexter's wardrobe is pastels. And to not include them in this palette would be to ignore the part of his personality that covers up who he truly is inside. So he has like a peach pastel shirt, and I chose Ice Kissed from Divina to represent that. I'm also excited to get some use out of this shade. I also chose Water Mist from Divina because he also wears a lot of mint. And I chose Light Year from Terra Moons to round out this row. This one's a little bit more yellowy. I don't think he wears yellow, but I think there's a lot of brightness in the show. Like, it's very sunny a lot of the time, and I thought Light Year kind of tied in with that. So this, my friends, is my Dexter palette. And I think the contrast in vibes to like this last row is definitely visible, but I also like that about it because that's like a big thing about the show. The contrast between the life he seems to live and the life that he actually lives. So being a little bit off is kind of like part of it, don't you think? So, based on some of the feedback I've seen today from people kind of like, you know, sharing the Lethal reveal and talking about it, I feel like my opinion might be unpopular, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's my opinion and that's fun. I don't love it. I don't love what Lethal Cosmetics did. I'm gonna post the picture of the main palette up here. I feel like they made a collector's item. They made a piece of memorabilia. They didn't make a palette for function. And even as it comes to memorabilia, there's something that I like about watching a show with like off-color characters, with like imperfect people, where you sympathize, but also you criticize people doing shitty things. But I feel like, to me, this palette is like, I want to be Dexter. I want to, like, own a little secret box that I keep in my air conditioner, and, like, there's a brush set that's meant to look like his knives, and it's like, I want to own his knife roll, and I don't want that. I enjoy watching the show, but I don't want to be him. And owning these things are not about me appreciating the show, it's about, like, me wanting to step into his character. And, like, it's not that serious, it's just for fun. But I feel like there is a difference between having something that's just, like, inspired by the colors and the vibe of it, and having something that's, like, owned by the character who's, like, all in all not a great guy, you know? And besides just the packaging, the color story is very unimaginative, you know? As I was kind of snarking about, my first thought when I saw that they were doing a Dexter palette was like, okay, blood. Like, blood is a huge thing on Dexter. It's like what he's passionate about in his work, but it also is in his like secret life or whatever. And I feel like this palette stopped there and then just added in moody neutrals. And also, from the swatches, like that bright orange doesn't make sense to me. The deeper colors, yeah, it just feels like that's, like, they couldn't make it 11? Is it 11 shades? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. When's a palette 11 shades? But yeah, I guess they were like, we can't make it 11 shades of red, so we'll add in some, like, a dark gray, a dark brown. It's interesting too because I feel like there's a lot of brands doing collabs with like horror movies. Like Glamlight did it recently, and like Glamlight's not even on my radar that much anyway because the IP collabs I just find very like unexciting. Wicked Widow is going to be doing a collab with American Psycho, which I'm also very excited about because I'm also a big fan of American Psycho. And I'm like, if every horror movie is just like a red collab or like a gray and red collab, that's so boring. And then it is just about like getting the packaging, getting something that says the name of an IP that you already like, and it's not about like the makeup. And like this is fine. It's fine because we do buy makeup for different reasons, and not even like saying like, oh, I buy makeup for the artistry and you buy makeup for the packaging. Like, no, it's nuanced. Sometimes all of us do either one, you know? But what I'm looking for in a palette, like what I was looking for them in revealing this Dexter palette was to have it at least kind of do both. Have it be an item that's cool and reminds me of like a show that I like, but also is something that I'm going to get creative looks out of. And when I look at this palette, I feel like there's very few looks that I would get out of it. I feel like it's way more about owning like a collector's item from Dexter, owning the blood slide box, than it is about making makeup looks. And if I'm buying makeup that's as memorabilia, it's not to use, then it's just like, it's like buying memorabilia that I'm just going to put on my makeup desk. And I'm going to clutter up my makeup desk with something I'm not going to reach for. And that's just not what I'm looking for. Wow, this was so negative. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna pop up this picture. I mean, I probably already did, but it's from the account Makeup on Your Radar too. I feel like Trend Mood posts a lot of like major releases, and Makeup on Your Radar posts more, and especially more like indie releases. I think it's interesting that Lethal is doing nail polishes. As far as I know, they haven't done nail polishes before. And they do have one that's like, it looks like a shimmery red that's darker but also lighter. I don't know what's going on with it, but I like the look of it. And I feel like they could have just done that one because they have 1, 2, 3 other shades that I just don't get as part of the collection. There's like this multi-chromatic purple to green. There's a shimmery purple. There's like a light pink. I don't understand any of those for this collab. There's a liquid highlighter, sure. I mean, I will say I like the red tips of the brushes, and I might be interested if they were sold separately and getting like one, but I don't want a whole roll of new brushes. And there's some lip products. I don't know. I feel like a negative Nancy, but also I feel very relieved because it can be hard to resist IP collabs that are like exactly in your line of interest. And when I saw this reveal today, I was like, oh, that's nice that I'm not going to be tempted to buy this while I'm on my low buy. I think I'm also further disappointed just because I went through the process of making my own palette yesterday. Because as I said, my first thought was red, but then I pushed myself to think about like what else Dexter looks like to me in my brain, and it looks like all of these things. And I'm like, I really love the blue with the red with the green especially, but then with like all the other little surprising pops. I'm really into this. It just feels to me like Lethal came up with the first step and then just ran with that instead of like pushing themselves a little bit farther into the other colors that are in this like 8-season-long show with 2 spin-offs and another one on the way. That's so much more than just blood. So for me this time, the fun is not in purchasing what they had to make, which I feel like for me, for this point in my life, for this point of my spending goals, I'm happy for. And it pushed me to create a color story that I would not have created otherwise with this show that I really like in mind, putting together a bunch of shades that I really like. Oh, let me show you what's on my eyes. I had a vision in my head of like red shadow wing with shimmer, and I feel like this worked out exactly as I wanted it to. So I started, I don't even know if it was important, but I did put a little bit of this gray just lightly in my crease because I didn't want to put like sheer shimmers over nothing. I wanted to like have a little base of depth. So that's what I started with. And then I used Chandelier from Cleona. I popped that over my lid. And then I took Electric from Glaminatrix. I popped that also over my lid, more so in the center. That's where we get like all that orange from. Because I wanted the shimmer to be like all over. Next, with the pencil brush, I took my red matte, which was Boop from Luxie, and I did that, you know, over my top lid, winged it out, did it on my lower lid too. I deepened up the lower lash line a little bit with Heartthrob from Luxie, and then on the top of the lid, for like the swoosh and the inner corner, I went in with Ice Kissed from Divina. That's what gives it this like little bit of iciness in there. So, as I said, I didn't like the Lethal collab. I'm relieved I don't want to buy it. And I'm also nervous that this video is just like me shitting on the Lethal collab. But let me just say, in line with what I was saying in my last video about like how the internet has changed people, I love ragging on the internet, okay? I feel like the internet makes us all want to get along. The internet is like, everyone here, like everyone gets thrown into one pit. Now say things that everyone else can agree with. And I don't think we all have to agree. And I think that's the spice of life, us not all agreeing. So I don't like the Lethal palette. It's okay if you do, but I don't want it, and I'm happy I don't want it. And I'm again reminded how important it is to play with what you already have, because just like the idea of something can make you come up with a color story that you would have never thought of. So it was fun for me to create this knowing I would be able to compare it to what Lethal was going to come out with, but I could have, in theory, come up with anything. I could have been like, let me make an American Beauty palette, a Call Me By Your Name palette, because with my single shadows, I can create something, and then when I'm done with it, I can close it up, put them back away into my collection, and make something else. Was this a rant video? Did you agree with my hot take? Do you strongly disagree? Let me know nicely if you want. I've still never tried Lethal. I've been tempted to purchase some of their singles, and I had them in my cart at some point recently and I didn't buy them. And now I won't for a while because I'm on a low buy. But I think people like them, right? Or at least they like their mattes. I think that's what I've heard. I think people like their mattes, but the shimmers are a little bit up in the air. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up here. If you enjoyed this, I hope you'll give me a thumbs up and subscribe. I'm not usually just like dogging on new releases, but like sometimes you just gotta, you know? Either way, thank you so much for being here. Bye! Can someone tell this girl to put her Christmas tree away? Christmas was so last year.